energy, like I said before when I started after lunch, energy is a really big issue in Australia because we're such a vast country and because we rely so much on the energy that we use. Alternative energies are something we've been hearing a lot about over the last 10 years. Well, that I've been hearing a lot about over the last 10 years. Other people were probably, aware of this stuff a long time ago. Alternative energies are coming from a variety of sources. Jonathon Upson is the Senior Development Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Infigen Energy. That's the company that is Australia's largest owner of wind farms. He manages the proposed 44 wind turbine Flyers Creek project, south of Orange, and he's worked on a number of other wind development projects over the past 8 years. He's got extensive experience in power generation, having worked for almost 20 years in gas and turbine and wind energy development fields. Now, he wants to speak to us today about the growth of renewable energy and the possibilities that lie therein. So, ask you to welcome Jonathon Upson.
Thank you very much, Sally. All right, we're going to go through a very short overview of my company, also about renewable energy worldwide, and also what's happening in South Australia, and then a bit what the Central West could do as far as renewable energy goes. But first, I got to show you my favorite cartoon. I like to think this puts into perspective the different amenity impacts of the different ways you can generate electricity. Infigen Energy, as you said, is the largest owner of wind farms in Australia. We are also the 8th largest owner of wind farms in America, but we are also actively developing solar projects. And we have 5 solar PV projects with development approval in Australia. We are headquartered in Sydney, and our stock is listed on the ASX, but you can't buy it on the basis of anything that I tell you today. These are our wind farms. The Lake Bonney wind farm, which is built in 3 stages in Australia, is still the largest wind farm in the Southern Hemisphere. The 2 wind farms, the Woodlawn and Capital, are near Bungadore, just outside of Canberra. That's the one you see the Prime Minister's visit on occasion. And the Alinta wind farm on the west coast is probably the highest wind speed wind farm on the mainland. Just a terrific wind resource out there. They just need a bit more transmission. So, what's happening worldwide with wind energy? Well, here's a chart of wind energy's growth for the last 15 years. And I would challenge you to think of another industry that has a more consistent and fast-growing record as the wind energy industry. In fact, it's actually been growing year on year, 28% for the last 15 years. I mean, it's a phenomenal growth record and a phenomenal success overseas. The only thing about this graph that I don't like is that it stretches out so much, you kind of lose what it actually means in the short term. And what it actually means is wind energy worldwide is actually doubling every 3 years. So 3 years ago, there was half as much wind energy as there is now. And hopefully 3 years from now, it'll be double what there is today. So it is just phenomenally a fast-growing industry. Australia in the list of nations, this is the installed wind energy capacity. As you can see, we're fairly far down the list. But of course, we're also one of the relatively small populations as well. But when you read about some of the things in the newspaper about wind energy is not effective, it's not efficient, it hurts people, it makes chickens lay yolkless eggs and makes sheep get split ends, you need to keep in mind, all that's been reported and a lot more. Australia is not the proving ground for wind energy. If there was any problems with wind energy, it would have come up decades ago overseas. Solar PV, as Tim Flannery talked about, is also growing very rapidly as well. As you can see, it's even growing at actually a faster rate than wind energy. Now, by the way, the bottom of my slide shows the references of where the information comes from, and so when you get the presentations, if you want to learn more about it, but these next couple of slides are from the Australian Energy Market Operator. They're the people who actually run the electricity market, so this is the best data that you can get. So we're going to talk about South Australia, because while there has been a lot of success overseas, South Australia has actually had a tremendous success themselves. So as you can see, wind energy makes up 21% of the installed electricity generation capacity today. And you can see the figures for coal and gas as well. Solar is almost 4%, and that's coming from almost nowhere a couple of years ago. But if there's a cynic in the audience that might say, well, that's great, you've installed 20% wind energy, but how much do you actually generate? The wind doesn't blow all the time, so how much are you actually making? Well, the answer is 26% of South Australia's electricity last fiscal year was generated by wind energy, which is the blue column you can see here. This is gas, this is coal, and the blue is wind. And this is what actually happens. The supply has to equal the demand every second of every day. So if wind energy is going up, coal and gas have to go down. That's just how the electricity market works. And this has been and the other thing, obviously, you're taking note of is that wind is now actually number 2 generating technology in South Australia. I kind of take exception with the term alternative energy. I mean, if you're actually producing the second highest source of electricity generation, that's not really alternative anymore. And in fact, our lead over coal is going to get much greater. In fact, today, as I speak, there is not one electron being made by coal-fired generation in South Australia. They haven't run out of coal. It's just the 2 plants there are not efficient enough to actually run, except and one plant is going to run in the summertime, but right now there's actually no electricity being made by coal generation. So it is an astounding success in South Australia, what's happened in the course of just 4 or 5 years. And as you would imagine, if you reduce the coal and gas-fired generation, what's going to happen? Well, the greenhouse gas emissions are obviously going to decrease, and the amount is 28%. And that's in the face of rising demand. So the electricity demand, particularly not so much the last couple of years, but the first 3 years, of actually going up, but actually the emissions are actually gone down by 28%. And as far as what you can do on a particular day, this chart is from a particular day in May. Wind is the top line here, and you can see wind was over 50% of the generation that day for basically the whole day. It got up to 70%. Coal is just piddling around at 10%. I actually got an email from my office. Wind energy, again, is over 50% this morning in South Australia, so over half the electricity in South Australia this morning was being generated by wind, and this happens now routinely. And guess what? There's no flickering light bulbs, there's no power outages, the grid is able to handle it just fine. Solar PV is also growing at a very rapid pace as well, as you can see by this chart. This is only 2011 data. As of right now, it's about 1,500 on this scale, is where PV is at now in 2012. So that's also a very, very rapid uptake for solar PV. Whoops. Now, the next question is, well, how much does all this cost? That's all great. It's terrific that you generate this electricity, but I don't want my electricity bills to go up very much. Well, these figures are from IPART. As most of you know, IPART sets the electricity prices in New South Wales. And this is from their most recent determination. The scheme that actually builds wind farms is called the Renewable Energy Target Scheme. It was put in by the Howard government about 10 years ago. It was then divided a couple of years ago into the large-scale Renewable Energy Target Scheme, or the LRET. That part of your electricity bill is less than 2% of your electricity bill, and it amounts to $3 per household per month. That's it. So when you read stories about wind farms and solar is jacking up electricity prices and they're skyrocketing, it's absolute nonsense. The sum total, the complete subsidy, if you want to call that, is $3 per household per month. That's it. That's the sum, that's the total cost that's building wind farms and solar facilities in Australia. I'm just going to gloss over this chart very quickly, but there's also actually a benefit to wind energy as well. This chart shows in the purple line the wholesale price of electricity. That's the price that we get paid. Actually, has dropped in half over the last 5 years as wind energy, that's the gray columns, have risen. And the two are related. Basically, we bid into the wholesale market underneath the coal and gas-fired generators because it doesn't cost anything to run a wind farm. Once you build it, it's the cheapest way to make electricity. So we underbid them, and that causes the wholesale price to go down. And so that's actually a benefit because that, if the regulators are doing their job, should flow through to your retail bills as well. So this story is a front-page story from the Daily Telegraph saying that building of wind turbines is sending power prices sky high. It is just absolute nonsense. It's 100% in error. As we said, first of all, it's not expensive. It's $3 per household per month. The Renewable Energy Target Scheme is a national scheme. This $3 per household per month is nationwide. It's completely independent of how many wind turbines get built in New South Wales. In fact, this chart shows you a pie chart of the wind energy installed in the different states. And as you can see, New South Wales, being the most populous state, it's pretty clear that they're not getting their fair share of renewable energy investment. South Australia, as you can see, has over half of the wind energy installed in Australia. So actually, it would be not too far off to say that the last 10 years you've been paying a little bit on your electricity bill for the Renewable Energy Target Scheme to build wind farms in South Australia. And that point is just starting to get through to some of the politicians that maybe this isn't the best idea, that we should be actually paying to build wind farms somewhere else. This is a chart, this is a study that was done by Sinclair Knight Mertz, one of the larger consulting firms, about wind farm investment in Australia. And it was launched by the New South Wales Parliamentary Secretary of Renewable Energy in June. And it showed that there's been $4 billion spent building wind farms and operating wind farms in Australia since we started about 6-7 years ago. And that's in Australia. That's not buying imported things and bringing them in. That's $4 billion spent within Australia, including BlueScope steel that are then manufactured into towers by Australian manufacturers. But more importantly, this report says that in order to meet the renewable energy target, we're going to need $17 billion more investment. And most of that investment is going to incur in regional areas like this one. So again, going back to this graph, the question is, do you want that $17 billion, do you want a good chunk of that spent here in New South Wales, or would you like to have it spent somewhere else? Here in the Central West, there's, as you would know, there's been the Blaney wind farm that's been operating for about a decade. It's a very popular wind farm. In fact, it's so popular that Blaney Shire actually has it on its logo. We're proposing a wind farm south of Orange called the Flyers Creek Project. It's a 44-turbine project. There's also a wind farm we're proposing east of Wellington called the Berdangra Project, which is another 33 turbines as well. To give you an idea of the scale, what that means is the Flyers Creek Project could power over 40,000 typical homes here in New South Wales. The other thing that we have a solar farm near Manildra that we have planning approval for, but the problem is that large-scale solar projects are 1.5 to 2 times more expensive than wind energy today. So we can't build that project unless someone gives us a grant of some sort, like the Solar Flagships program, because basically large-scale solar is not competitive with wind energy today. But that certainly could change 3, 4, 5 years from now. It could be that large-scale solar PV ends up being as cheap as wind energy. Another thing that could start happening in the Central West are, I would say, medium-scale PV opportunities where on top of warehouses or office buildings or factories, you can put PV panels on the roof, and you actually connect them, as it said, behind the meters. In other words, you're actually offsetting the use of that building, and that's actually much more lucrative than selling into the wholesale market. So we only get paid about 4 cents a kilowatt hour for our electricity we send into the grid. But if you actually put PV panels on top of a warehouse, and your current price is, say, 20 cents a kilowatt hour, then you're actually effectively getting paid 20 cents, which is much better than what we get paid. So those kind of opportunities are almost there. They're almost economic now to do them the way the prices are today. One of the things, and this kind of goes to what Tim Flannery was talking about during his presentation, there's a group of very committed and dedicated and sharp citizens here in the community who, in the later stages of forming a community, the Central New South Wales Renewable Energy Cooperative. And this is a cooperative where it's going to give people the opportunity to actually invest in large-scale renewable projects or even medium-scale renewable projects. And it's going to give you a chance to actually answer this question, what if we could own a wind turbine? So the concept of this is that, for example, a project like Flyers Creek, we'd own 43 turbines, we'd sell 1 turbine to the cooperative, and that cooperative then would be owned by the cooperative, and then the profits from that turbine would go to the cooperative and then be distributed to its members as a dividend. There's information on this by the front door. There's sheets like this that you can pick up if you'd like to learn more information about that. In conclusion, Renewable energy, as I hope I made the point, is a very, very rapidly growing industry worldwide. And Ian talked a bit about, the urgency of having to move to clean energy sources, and we certainly agree with that. But you can see that even in South Australia, without, I would say, huge government intervention, certainly not a war footing, we've actually taken South Australia from basically zero wind energy up to 26% in a matter of 6-7 years. And there's no reason why New South Wales, Victoria could not follow that lead. There's absolutely nothing stopping them from doing that. It's going to take a lot longer because New South Wales and Victoria is a lot larger energy market. It's going to take a lot longer to get up to 26%. But there's no reason why they couldn't start aiming there and trying to get there. It's just a matter of political will. It's not that expensive. It's not hard to do. It's just a matter of putting the right economic incentives in place. South Australia, as I said, is just it's a remarkable success story. It wasn't necessarily all planned that way, but that's how it's turned out. That it is leading, essentially leading one of the world leaders in renewable energy, both solar and wind energy. In the Central West, we've done solar monitoring at Manilta. We've done, obviously, wind speed monitoring at Vidangra and the Flyers Creek Wind Farm. So the Central West has terrific renewable resources. Doesn't have coal. That's probably a good thing, but it has great solar and it has great wind. There's absolutely no reason why the Central West couldn't become self-sufficient with clean energy by having wind farms built here and also having solar PV facilities built. And that's obviously what our company and the other companies in the renewable energy industry would certainly like to do. So I'd like to thank you very much for having me, and I'll be obviously available at the questions and answers after the break after this presentation. Thank you.